Forgiveness is one of the most beautiful emotions we can experience. And anybody who has been through receiving forgiveness, granting forgiveness, knows that. Even anytime we go to confession and we know even as difficult, as serious as our sins may be, the Lord forgives us over and over again. What a beautiful feeling it is to feel like the weight of the world has been lifted off your shoulders by the Lord or somebody else who has forgiven us. But as beautiful of a virtue it is, both people involved in the process of forgiveness have to practice a virtue. And the virtue specifically is humility. So when we've wronged somebody and we realize we have to bring them or go to them and apologize, well, we have to humble ourselves. Maybe we have to swallow our pride and be big about it and go to the other person and say, I'm sorry, what I said, what I did was wrong. Will you forgive me? Not everybody can do that. Many people, even if they feel guilty for something, they don't have the strength to bring themselves to actually apologize to somebody else. They may show it in their demeanor in other ways, and we might notice and say, this is this person's way of apologizing by the way they're being so kind to me right now. But not everybody can do it. And certainly not everybody can even do it with sincerity, forgiving from the heart. Well, all right, I'll forgive you this time. Well, no. As the Lord tells us in the gospel today, we must forgive our brother from our heart over and over again, just as the Lord forgives us in the sacrament of reconciliation over and over again. Notice when we go to confession, even if it's the same sins all the time, the priest never says, God is tired of forgiving you. He's forgiven you that sin enough. It's time to bite the bullet and stop. He never says that. The Lord just forgives us over and over again. So in order to bring our need for forgiveness to another person, we have to be humble. And we have to be big enough to do that. It takes a strong man, a strong woman, to go to another person and say, can you forgive me? I'm sorry. But the person who is receiving that request and who has to grant the forgiveness also has to be humble. That person has to put aside their own pride to blast them, to remind them of everything they said and did and just how much pain it caused them, whatever it may be, and to look at the person with compassion and realize this person is trying to make things right and say, okay, I forgive you. Not with any conditions, but just don't let it happen again or anything like that, but just say, okay, out of my love for you, I forgive you. And when we do that, we discover that the forgiveness itself is a greater experience, more powerful than even the anger that led to the event in the first place. In fact, if you think of a young couple, maybe a newly married couple who have their first fight, and they say a lot of angry things to each other, and then eventually they settle it, and the proverbial kissing and making up. Afterwards, they will tell you that experience of loving one another, of showing their love even after all of that pain, was a far greater experience or more powerful emotion than the anger was in the middle of the fight. And so the Lord challenges all of us today to remember the Lord has had to forgive all of us our own sins. We all have had need to go before the Lord and ask for forgiveness, and He always forgives us. And now He tells us to be ready to forgive one another. And so we have to look at both sides of forgiveness. Number one, is there somebody in our lives that we need to reach out to and apologize to? So many times we'll see in families siblings who haven't spoken in years because of a fight, sometimes a petty thing, but because it has just gone unanswered and unresolved. And time after time, maybe the person wants to reach out to the other one and just hesitates because it's not easy to do. You have to put yourself out on the limb a little bit because somebody might say, I know it's 30 years since I've spoken to my brother. I wonder if he will listen to me. And you know that when you call, he might pick up the phone and just say, no, I have nothing to say to you. As far as I'm concerned, you are dead to me, and hang it up. And we risk that. We know maybe that could be the response. Or maybe the other person, too, also would like to reconcile, but they don't have the strength to pick up the phone and initiate that outreach. And so two people who are longing to be reconciled with each other don't reconcile simply because one of them, or neither of them rather, is strong enough to initiate the experience. And if they finally do, and the two come together, then imagine the relief that it is. What a weight is off our shoulders when we get rid of the burden of that guilt. And then, of course, if we are the one who has been hurt and being the one that has to accept the apology and offer the forgiveness, make sure we do offer it. So often we'll hear people say, I'll never forgive you for what you did to me, and everything of that nature. Well, I'll forgive you, but I'm never going to forget what you did. Well, that doesn't help us. Sometimes we think we're hurting the other person by not forgiving them. But if we really look at it through, who are we hurting? We're hurting ourselves. The other person could actually leave the moment and say, well, Lord, I did the right thing. I was man enough, I was woman enough to go and apologize and try to reach out, and that person shut me down and wouldn't go along with it. At least I know I did the right thing. And that person can move on with peace in their heart and leave the harm in the past. And the person who refused to give the forgiveness is the one who carries the anger for the rest of their lives. And we discover that not forgiving somebody else is like ourselves drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die as a result of it. I remember one instance specifically from many years ago in one parish where I was assigned. I was in the post office and wearing my collar, and a woman came up to me and she goes, oh, Father, you're a priest in the area? I said, yes. She goes, oh, at what parish do you serve? And I mentioned the name of our parish. And her demeanor changed right away. She got very stiff and angry. And she says, I will never step foot in that church ever again. And I said, why? What happened? And she says, I brought my child there for CCD, and they flatly refused to accept my child. They just turned us away at the door. Now, I happen to be the moderator of the CCD program in that parish. So I said to her, I said, ma'am, what happened? Tell me, please. Let me try to correct it. And she said, when Monsignor so-and-so was pastor. And I said, Monsignor so-and-so, it's been 40 years since he was the pastor of the parish. You've got to let it go. And, of course, even if it was absolutely as sinister as she was implying by her discussion of it, and usually there's more involved to the story, that it was not just somebody who said, no, we won't bring your child to CCD. Usually there's something else, other circumstances that they're not telling. But even if it were just as evil as that, I'd say, come on, 40 years. That priest has long since passed away. So do you think even the night that happened that he lost one night's sleep because of that? Probably not. He moved on with it, never forgot about it, never remembered it, and this woman has remembered it and allowed herself to be haunted by it 40 years later, that she's still angry at even the mention of the name of that parish. So you see, when we don't forgive other people, we're not hurting them, we're hurting ourselves. Nobody can change the past, no matter what happened, and if we even wanted to. If somebody says, I wish I could go back and change what I said, what I did, because I regret sincerely the way that I hurt you, they can't change it. What's done is done. But when we don't forgive people for things that have happened in the past and we hang on to it, we allow the abuse of the past to continue to harm us into the present and the future. In other words, we become a perpetual victim of what somebody once did to us. So the sooner we can forgive somebody else and let it go, that's when we can have closure. Close the door in the event, leave it there, and move on with the relationship that we want to have, especially in the situation of somebody who comes to us and does apologize. So it can be difficult at times, but if somebody does come to you and say, I want to apologize, by all means, do so. And do so in a magnanimous way, saying to yourself, I could rehash the whole argument, but, saying, well, I'll forgive you, but you got to remember what you said to me, blah, blah, blah. No, that's just going to start everything up again and bring up all the anger. No, forget all the buts and the conditions and just say, okay. In your heart, you're saying, I could hold you accountable. I could blast you for everything you did and let you know everything I'm feeling in my heart. But instead, I will be big about it. I will swallow it and say, okay, I know, I understand, I forgive you. And a realization there that the person coming to us, asking for our forgiveness, means they have enough love and respect for us that it's important to them that we offer them forgiveness. And so we only hurt ourselves by not offering forgiveness to somebody. So by all means, please, if there's somebody that you know you owe forgiveness, that they've come to you, by all means, do so. Even if you turned them down initially, well, then pick up the phone and after we've calmed down, call them back and say, listen, I know you came to me and asked for forgiveness. Okay, I'm sorry I didn't do it then, but let's talk now. And that will bring about peace. But what do we do in the case of somebody who cannot or will not come to us for asking for forgiveness? Maybe we have somebody who doesn't even realize they hurt us. Maybe they live so far away and that we haven't seen them in years. Maybe the person has passed away and has no ability to call us to ask for forgiveness. How do we handle that? Well, this is what I do. I bring it to the Lord in prayer. And I say, Lord, somewhere that person will understand that he or she hurt me. Maybe it will be in this lifetime, in a moment of prayer somewhere. Maybe it will only be when they die and stand in judgment before you and you show them all their sins and they realize then that they hurt me, even though they never realized it during their life. But if it's the moment, when that moment comes, that they realize they hurt me and need my forgiveness, help them to know that I have already given it. This way I can move on and have closure on that event. And I can say, even if I reached out to the person, well, Lord, I did my best. I tried to reconcile. They were not ready to accept it from me. I really want them to have peace, but send it from another source. And whenever they come to realize there was something wrong there, if they ask me for forgiveness, I will gladly give it. And if it's only when they stand before you, help them know that I forgave them a long time ago. That gives us so much peace and so much of an ability to move on and tests our mettle. And when you do that, I feel good about myself, and I know you'll do the same. If we can do that, say, hey, I acted with integrity. We can somehow, perhaps maybe even pat ourselves on the back, not in a sinful way, not in a way of pride, but in a sense of understanding we acted the way the Lord acts. You notice the Lord never holds us accountable for our sins. When we go to confession, he never yells at us through the priest. He just forgives us over and over again. And that was his first gift to the church after he rose from the dead. When he met the apostles in the upper room the night of the resurrection, his first words to them was not, where were you when I needed you? How could you let them do this to me? But he simply said, peace be with you. And we must go and do the same. Forgive our brethren over and over again. There are only two human beings who ever existed who never had to ask anybody else for forgiveness. Jesus himself and Our Lady, our Blessed Mother. And today, as we welcome the Society of Santa Maria del Oriente with us, let the Blessed Mother's example be there for us. Imagine if somebody after the crucifixion of Jesus, they didn't hurt her directly, but look what they did to her son, knowing that Mary would feel those 7 swords that we talk about, and the sword of sorrow that Simeon prophesied would pierce her heart. Imagine somebody coming to her and saying, Mary, I'm sorry for what I did to your son. Maybe even one of the soldiers who crucified him, or one of the people who demanded his death. Can you forgive me? What would we imagine the Blessed Mother saying? Would we imagine her saying, I will never forgive you for what you did to my son? Don't you realize my son was sinless and you lied about him, blah, blah, blah? Inconceivable. She would never do that. No, she would have turned to them right away and say, yes, I do forgive you, because she was strong enough to do so. So if we can observe her example and be willing to forgive people who have hurt us, I know it's not easy. I've been there myself sometimes, and part of you just wants to lay them flat and says, I'll never forgive you for what you did. But at those moments, let us think and say, no, I'm really hurting myself by denying forgiveness. I'm not really hurting them. And turn to the Lord and ask him to have the strength to be man enough, to be woman enough to say, okay, I will rise above all the pain and all the hurt of the past, and I will reconcile with this person and accept the apology. Offer it if you need to. If you need to apologize to someone else, bring it to them. If they bring it to you, by all means, accept it. And then have the embrace or whatever it may be that's appropriate in the relationship, and close the door on the event, put it in the past, and move on with the peace that we know from the forgiveness of Christ, the peace that indeed only he can bring. May Jesus Christ be praised, now and forever.